The year is 1999. That sentence brings me back to my senior kindergarten class when I was 5 years old, where we used to read out the date on the blackboard every single day. The year 1999 exists as a stain in my mind, as the memory that will not go away, no matter how hard I try to forget it. 1999 marked the year I lost my first tooth, my first time on a plane, and unfortunately, the early loss of my childhood innocence. That one memory that refuses to be wiped. It all started with that new or old TV. At the time, Pokemon was the latest fad to hit the school. Pokemon cards, games, stickers, and the most popular, the TV show. So of course, every time I came home from school, I would stay glued to the TV until Pokemon came on at 5. The only problem was that my dad watched the news at 5:30, and Pokemon episodes were back to back, which meant I had to miss an episode every day, something I whined about constantly. My dad got tired of hearing me complain every day. That must be why he went and bought another TV. My dad put the TV he bought in my room. Unfortunately, it was just an old, small boob tube with rabbit ears even. It also only had 20 channels available, not including the channel Pokemon was on. I really didn't care, though. I was just thrilled to have a TV in my room. After surfing through the channels, I came to the conclusion that only Channel 2, TVO Kids, was worth watching, so I watched that for a while. It wasn't for another few months until I discovered Channel 21. One day in April, I was flipping through the channels, trying to see if Pokemon was on. I pressed Channel 21 into the remote, hoping there would be more channels, and to my delight, there was. My dad was surprised too, but he let me watch it because it seemed to have kids programming on it. The channel was called Caledon Local 21, and I later found out it was indeed broadcasted from the town of Caledon, Ontario, a town very close to my city. The shows I saw on Caledon 21 were poorly made, and I never understood what was going on in half of them. However, as I grew up, every time I thought about that channel, I realized more and more how messed up the shows were, and I had to ask myself, what was I watching? The following is a list of shows and episodes I remember seeing on Caledon Local 21. How I remember such details disturbs even me, but I guess things like this stand out in the minds of a child. The channel only ran a few shows, probably because it was only operational between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. April 1999, Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 12. Very sketchy name, if you were to look at it nowadays. The show featured a guy in a bear mascot costume, who would get a new visitor in his cellar every day. It was always a kid. The show was filmed with a camcorder, and not a very good one either. The police asked me a lot of questions about this show. This episode started with Mr. Bear sitting at a table playing checkers by himself. He sat there playing for a bit until there was a knock on the door. The camera was then looking up the stairs at the door, where there was another knock. Mr. Bear climbed the stairs and opened the door to reveal 2 young children. One was a boy about my age. The other was a girl who looked about 8. Mr. Bear danced in delight and then started talking to the kids. I couldn't hear any of them that well, I remember. Mr. Bear then led the kids into the cellar, which was pretty dark, only lit by a small oil lamp on the table. I can't really remember that much more, except him singing a song, which I couldn't hear very well either, probably because of that large bear mask. The episode ended with them playing hide and seek, and the kids hiding in a closet, and Mr. Bear counting. May 1999. Soup and Spoon. I don't think this was even a show. I think it was more of a special movie thing. All I know is I stopped watching Caledon Local 21 for a while, because I thought This show was too stupid, especially since Pokemon now came on at 4:30 and 5. I don't remember much of it, but it showed a can of soup and a spoon, both attached to strings, swinging back and forth as if someone was holding them and dangling them in front of the camera. Interestingly enough, the show was shot in a basement, which looked a lot like the one used by Mr. Bear's cellar. Like I said, I can't remember much. The only thing I remember clearly was the end. The entire thing was only half an hour and just included stuff I found stupid, such as the spoon chasing the soup, trying to eat him. The ending showed a table and about 7 kids sitting around it, each with a bowl of soup in front of them. They were sitting and looking at the camera, but with confused, almost frightened faces. The cameraman then held the can of soup in front of the kids and said, "Spoons ready." And then it just stopped. July 1999. It was summer. I hadn't watched Channel 21 in a while. Till one day, when I slept over at a friend's house and decided to check it out again. My friend had gotten a TV in his room for his 6th birthday, so we stayed up late. For us, 9:30 was very late, and watched TV. That's when I remembered Channel 21 and brought it up to my friend. We decided to see if it was on, and to our surprise, it was. They must have changed their broadcasting times. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 23. This episode was entertaining for my friend and me, mainly because it had a lot of swearing. However, now when I think about the episode, I realize something was definitely wrong when it was filmed. The episode started with the camera on its side, while it was facing Mr. Bear, who was walking upstairs to the cellar door. The camera then blacked out for a few seconds, before fading in, back upright and facing Mr. Bear. There was also another kid talking to him, but this kid looked to be about 11 or 12. He was talking to Mr. Bear for a while, but I couldn't hear very well, again with the crappy camcorder, until the kid started raising his voice. The kid was saying how it was late and his sister had to go home. You could also hear more voices in the background. I remember Mr. Bear clearly saying, "Get the F out, you're not invited," with a deep voice muffled by the bear mask. I remember my friend and I looking at each other and laughing at the mention of the forbidden F word, but the episode got weirder. The kid began to climb the stairs before turning around and saying he was going to call the cops. Mr. Bear began to break into a run after the kid, who started screaming and running as well. The camera just cut out then, and that was the end of the episode. The channel then turned into static shortly after. August 1999. I didn't watch Channel 21 after that. In August, I grew more curious to see Mr. Bear's cellar for some reason, though. The last episode I saw of Mr. Bear was weird and had swearing, which also made me think the show was meant for teenagers. Nonetheless, I flipped onto Channel 21 when my dad was busy. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 28. Apparently, this episode had been playing the entire month of August. It was studied a lot by the police. The entire episode was just Mr. Bear sitting in a chair talking to the audience. "Hello, kids. Do you want to visit my cellar? If you do, please write me a letter at this address." The screen then switched to a white screen with multicolored letters reading the address. And that was what remained for the rest of the episode. This repeated for 5 hours every day until September came. And guess what I did? I sent Mr. Bear, or that sick bastard who portrayed him, a letter. I did it out of curiosity, mostly. My dad was okay with it because he thought it was a legit kid show. And then again, he never saw any of what I had seen on Channel 21. So I wrote a letter using my best writing possible. I think I just said how I wanted to meet Mr. Bear. So my dad sent the letter to the address Mr. Bear said on the show. It stayed on all day anyway for some reason. It took about a week to get a response, which I was surprised it did. I still have the letter I received on August 15th, 1999. The letter read, "Dear Elliot, thank you ever so much for your letter. I would love to have you in my cellar. We play games, watch movies, and go fire camping in the middle of the woods. Come to my house at," the police cut out the address, "Caledon, Ontario, Canada. I look very forward to having fun with you. Love, Mr. Bear." I cannot believe my dad never found this sketchy, because he actually took me to the guy's house. And then, that's when the police became involved. Those endless questions, those pictures of terrified kids, the woods. That brings me to why I'm writing this blog. That psycho and his friends did some screwed up stuff back then, and now, it seems, he's trying to get into contact with me again. The entire police thing is coming back. That has brought 1999 back to me. Over a decade later, it's happening again. November 14th, 2009. People have been emailing me, asking me what exactly happened in 1999. I will get to that. Those weird TV shows I was watching apparently were meant to attract kids to Mr. Bear's house. What Mr. Bear did shocked the entire town. My dad actually drove me to Caledon, along with the address Mr. Bear left on the letter. The house was actually on the outskirts of the town, in the open farmland. I still remember that house. It looked like an old farmhouse that looked to have been built in the early 1900s. The windows were all boarded up. The house looked to be in a state of disrepair. As we walked up to the house, I remember my dad checking the address over and over again and looking at the house in disbelief. Then the door opened. I expected Mr. Bear to be at the door, but I was surprised to see a police officer emerge from the creaking doorway. The officer began talking to my dad while I quickly asked if this was Mr. Bear's house. The officer's face cringed slightly, and he muttered, "Oh God," or something like that. He started talking quietly to my dad so I couldn't hear. My dad told me to go wait in the car. Then we just went home. My dad was quiet the whole way home. I felt like something strange had happened. My dad never told me what had happened, not for a while. I forgot about it anyway. Channel 21 no longer came on, and when I asked about it, my dad would not acknowledge its existence. I think it was when I was 13 that I learned the truth. I remembered Channel 21 one day and asked my dad about it. I guess he finally decided I should hear the truth. Caledon Local 21 was a local TV channel that ran from October 1997 to August 1999 in the Peel region of Ontario. The entire channel was made from a house in Caledon, the one I visited, and run by a man who was not really known by anyone in the area. The channel was only available to older TVs because the signal was one only picked up by rabbit ears, weaker signals, that is. The man created all the shows on the channel, all of which were kids' shows. He was Mr. Bear. He was the mysterious cameraman. The real reason he created the channel was more disturbing than what was originally thought. As you might have already guessed, he kidnapped kids and held them in his cellar. But while most people thought he was a serial-killing child molester, he really wanted to use the kids for another purpose. The day I arrived, the man had fled his house the night before, the day before the police went in to investigate. I wasn't the only one who was watching. December 2nd, 2009. Sorry for not answering any questions for so long. I haven't accessed my email account for some time. Anyway, let me finally set things straight about what I know. Back in October, I visited the house previously owned by the man who ran Caledon Local 21. 2 women lived there, operating a daycare business. How ironic. Now, to answer the questions you guys emailed me. Who else watched Caledon Local 21? I know other people watched it, for sure, including those kids who wound up at Mr. Bear's house. After some Google searches, I found a few people on the No Seeker forum who were discussing shows from Caledon 21. They talked about the 2 shows that I watched, but also another 2 shows that I had never seen before. A user named I Am Real Life seemed to know all the shows that were broadcast on 21. Here are the 2 I've never seen. The Fallen Angel in Life. I Am Real Life described it as a fairly boring show about a guy rambling on in front of the camera about how we must please Satan and appease him before it's too late. Paint with the Soul. I Am Real Life and another user called Siggy92 were discussing this show. They described it as Blair Witch-like, as it consisted of the cameraman wandering around a forest at night, doing nothing particularly interesting. I'll go looking for the conversations to see if I can get the links. Question: where is Mr. Bear, or the guy who wore the costume? If I did know, I would have said earlier. I have no idea where the guy is, or if he's dead or alive. Hopefully dead. When I see my dad's friend next time, I'll ask him about this. Maybe I can get a more definitive answer. Question: what did Mr. Bear do to the children? Answer: this is by far the most common question I've been asked. I found this out in October as well, via my dad's friend, who is a retired Caledon regional officer. Apparently, the man playing Mr. Bear took the kids out of his house and into the forest nearby. What he did there, police are not entirely sure how it happened, but 16 charred bodies of children between the ages of 4 and 13 were found in a 15 by 15 foot ditch deep within the forest. My dad's friend did not want to go into exact detail, but I'm seeing him next Thursday anyway, so maybe I can extort some information from him then. That's all I have for now. Thanks for keeping an interest in my blog. I will try to gather as much information as I can for my next post. I've actually been getting pretty interested in it myself. It should be my right to know what the hell happened. January 14th, 2010. Sorry I haven't posted anything for a while. I kind of lost interest in this blog since I hit a standstill while looking for more information about the identity of the owner of Caledon Local 21. However, a few weeks ago, I struck gold. I found some answers, surprisingly, from the father of a kid I used to babysit. He lives just across the street, and I used to look after his kids when they were younger. He's also currently unemployed. He used to live near the woods outside of Caledon and witness the owner's activities in the woods. His name is Anthony Polo. When he lived in the small bungalow outside the woods, he would often venture into the woods to smoke a joint or two before returning to his work as a wood craftsman. Polo described that sometimes he would hear voices of children coming from deep within the woods, as well as a glowing light off in the distance. Polo told me these events started in late 1997. Note, this is around the time Caledon Local 21 began airing. He apparently became annoyed by this happening every once in a while and actually went to investigate. Polo then described what the whole scene looked like when he got there. There was a group of kids, he said about 13 to 17, the ages 5 to 12, gathered around a large fire pit with a burning fire. With them was a single adult. Polo talked to the man, noting his unusually unkempt appearance, something like a crack addict, as well as his consistent twitching, and asked what he was doing out in the woods with these kids. The man said they were on a camping trip, something they did frequently. Polo, not suspecting anything, Caledon has one of the lowest crime rates in Canada, simply left it at that and told them to be quieter. Polo then paused for a while before telling me that they never became quieter. In fact, sometimes he heard loud chanting from the children in an unknown language. He didn't bother meeting the man again, and he was moving away. I told Polo that the man was probably the owner of Camdon 21, but he doubted it, as he heard that the man was moving to Pickering by several other residents near that area. Here is what I know now. The man would take children into the woods regularly for camping. The fire pit Polo described may be the hole the bodies of the children were found in. The children Polo saw are probably the ones found dead. The man moved to a city called Pickering, a smaller city near the edge of Toronto. I will discuss this with my dad's friend, the ex-cop, and see if this matches anything the police knew about the man. I also want to know if he has any other knowledge about what was aired on Camdon Local 21. February 10th, 2010. Good news, guys. I talked to my dad's friend, and he discussed a lot of information with me. First, I asked if the police had any information on the man who ran Camdon Local 21. He replied that they have only had the same leads for years and never found a suspect. However, the Peel Regional Police do have some of the tapes found in the house of Camdon Local 21, the one it was broadcasting from. He took me over so I could watch a few. I guess I haven't said much about him yet. My dad's friend's name is Mitchell Wilson. Pretty nice guy. He seems to understand my thirst for knowledge on what happened during the late 90s in that house. He feels it was wrong for my dad to keep it from me for so long. He took me to the Davis Road police station. If you don't know, it's the largest station in Camdon, and one of the largest within the Peel region itself. Each of the main stations around Peel have some of the tapes. I was able to watch all of the footage that the Davis Road station has. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take any tapes home for obvious reasons. Paint with the Soul, Episode 10, Garbage Thrown Away. Paint with the Soul was one of the shows that I Am Real Life and Siggy92 discussed on Neoseeker. I told the police about this, and they informed me that 12 episodes of the show were made and broadcast between December 5th, 1997 and January 8th, 1998. Exactly as I Am Real Life and Siggy92 described, the episode opened with the cameraman wandering around in the woods. It appeared to be during the evening, as it seemed that the sun was setting. The cameraman walked along a path until he got to an area where there was a lot of garbage lying in the leaves. The camera looked around at the various wrappers, bottles, bags, and boxes, making sure each item got a few seconds of screen time. The camera then focused on a single area before the man spoke. I recall he spoke in a very timid, quiet voice, and I swear I've heard it somewhere else before, like on another Camdon Local 21 show. I could barely hear what he was saying, but he mainly talked about how humans are garbage, or something that had to do with saving ourselves by cleaning up the garbage. He means us, of course. It actually sounded really stupid, but still, a feeling of dread came over me. I mean, that forest was positively where those bodies were found, right? Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 25. When the police administrator brought the tape in, I actually said, "Oh, shit," and chuckled a bit out loud. Of course, I got stares from the staff, but Wilson explained to them about my little experience with Mr. Bear and how I still kept the letter that he sent me. Like the previous episode, this one included the guy wearing the bear mascot costume. The episode began with Mr. Bear waddling over to his cellar door with a bottle of orange juice in his paw. On the ground were 6 shot glasses, as well as a small bottle that contained an unknown liquid. Mr. Bear poured an equal amount of orange juice into each glass before opening the small bottle and depositing 1 drop into each glass. Mr. Bear then went off camera. There were some minor sounds such as shuffling, and then Mr. Bear emerged from behind the camera location. Following him were 16 children. Some looked as young as 4, others looked like they were practically teenagers. As the kids entered, the administrator commented that this was the only episode that showed all 16 victims. The kids all looked rather content, except for this one who had visible bruises on his face, and unlike the other kids, he had a more fearful expression. He also looked about 11 or 12, which caused me to recognize him. He was the kid who had asked about his sister and subsequently met an unknown fate at the end of episode 23. That one episode I watched during July 1999. When I told the administrator this, he confirmed it was the same kid. He also featured in episode 24, an episode that only aired once at 3 o'clock on July 1999. The police have still not found the tape. Mr. Bear then broke into a song singing about citrus fruits and how good vitamin C was for you. I could barely hear the lyrics as they were muffled by the bear mask. The kids all drank their juice, the one from episode 25 doing so rather reluctantly, and the episode ended. After viewing the tape in possession of Davis Roads Police Station, I'm satisfied, but only temporarily. I still want to know the full story. The police just keep giving me the same crap about the creator of Caledon 28 being a fetishist pedophile, as well as an apparent cultist. I'll sign off for now, get into university first, and get information later. Hopefully, I'll get back to this blog as soon as possible. May 8th, 2010. Last month, I finally got my G2 license. In Ontario, Canada, this allows you to drive a car by yourself, as well as with some passengers after 6 months. I, of course, took advantage of this and drove into Caledon for a little Sunday drive. Since I haven't updated this blog in a while, I figured I might as well visit the house where the infamous channel of my childhood was located. The house looked different than when I last saw it in October. The place was no longer used as a daycare and just sat there abandoned. However, it did have a for sale sign showing that someone still owned it, wanting to get rid of it, it would seem. The abandoned house drew fuzzy memories from my mind, mainly of that day my dad took me to visit Mr. Bear. A feeling of dread came upon me. What happened to the children while they were living in that house? I walked up the steps to the front door and peered through the window. Inside, I could see a nearly empty hallway with a few boxes at the end. At the end of the hallway, to the right, was an open doorway, presumably leading to the kitchen. To the left were 2 doors, both apparently leading to the rooms visible through the windows outside. I wondered where the cellar entrance was and whether it had been sealed up. I walked around to the back of the house and found my answer. 2 wooden doors, lying at an almost flat angle, were padlocked shut. This had to be the cellar. Not wanting to hang around, you cannot imagine what was going through my mind at the time, I departed. Behind the house, the empty field continued on until it reached a dense forest that lined the horizon. I wondered if that was the forest where the bodies of the children had been found. I thought, screw it, and proceeded to walk across the field behind the house and into the forest. The forest was oddly quiet, save for the periodic sounds of a woodpecker drilling into a distant tree. I continuously made my way deeper into the woods, not really caring about the fact that I had no idea where I was going. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like there was something I had to find. I came to a thinner part of the woods, and a few small houses stood in the distance. Polo's house crossed my mind as I wondered if one of those homes had belonged to him. I neared a small clearing in which I could see 3 adequately sized logs gathered around a black charred area. showing a small fire had been lit there very recently. "Hey, get out of our fort!" Those woods nearly gave me a heart attack. I turned to my left and saw 2 dark-clad people running towards me. My initial thought was to run. However, as they came closer, I saw they were really just kids in their early teens, probably 13 or 14, maybe even 12. As they approached me, they realized my size as well. I'm 6'1", while they could have been no bigger than 5'8". One might have even been 5'7". "Well, we said get out," the larger one said, who was wearing a Slipknot t-shirt. I stood my ground and shrugged. The shorter one was wearing a Metallica shirt, and he swung out a butterfly knife and held it in my direction. "No, you wouldn't want to," I said in a deep, serious tone, trying to sound as badass as possible. I pulled out my cell phone. The 2 kids withdrew, the one in the Metallica shirt putting away his knife. "Look, dude, we don't like people in our fort, so can you just go?" The one with the Slipknot shirt said, obviously intimidated. I had no business in the forest anyway, so I uttered out a single "fine" and turned before I realized I had a great opportunity. "Did either of you hear of a guy who murdered a bunch of kids in these woods about 13 years ago?" I asked. The 2 looked at each other in confusion before the one wearing the Metallica shirt answered. "Yeah, everybody knows about that guy," he said, as if I were stupid. The kid in the Slipknot shirt continued. "He still lives around here in the storm drain. My big brother says he saw him in a bear costume once, wandering around the forest at night." My instincts told me this was probably a lie, and the owner of Caledon Local 21 is probably long gone, only existing as folklore in this small, isolated community. However, as a human, the thought of a mysterious unknown sparks interest within me. "And where is the storm drain?" I asked, just out of curiosity. I didn't actually believe the kid's story. The kid in the Metallica shirt stared at me for a moment, his eyes seemingly full of annoyance, yet curiosity as well. "You're not from around here, are you? Why did you even come here?" Now, I do admit I was slightly startled by the nature of the question. However, I figured I might as well explain why I was here, just in case people mistook me or my intentions. I told the 2 kids about my experience with the man in Caledon Local 21, and that I had come to maybe seek out some sort of closure, although even I wasn't exactly sure how. The 2 kids seemed familiar with the channel as they smiled and looked at each other when I mentioned it. They also became more understanding and gave me a detailed description on how to get to the storm drain. Shortly after, I decided to turn around the way I had come and head back to town, leaving the kids and their fort. But now, you're probably wondering why I left out such details about what the kids told me just now. It's because I'm choosing to conclude what I've gathered for now. Here is what the kids told me. The storm drain lies ahead of the kids' fort, same direction I was heading. The drain ends at a small river where access to the water is drained out. Near here is a small playground. The kids told me that people rarely use it. The man supposedly lives in the large pipe that rainwater drains out of. People have seen him, although always either wearing a bear mask or the mask in a full-body bear costume. I don't believe this is true, and in fact, simply a myth made by the residents of Caledon. The story does not seem plausible in any way. Why did no one call the police? Didn't the guy look suspicious? And other questions like these leave the story invalid. I may visit the storm drain, not because I believe the story, but because it was an excuse to visit Caledon again. So this blog doesn't die. With no more tapes to watch, I don't know what else to talk about. Thanks for continuing to support me and my blog. I know many of you are looking forward to more information about what happened in Caledon during the year 1999. I'll do my best to continue my research into the topic. Elliot out for now. Update, October 7th, 2010. Wow, nearly 5 months since my last update. I'm guessing everyone pretty much thinks I'm dead, right? Thankfully, I'm not, but in all seriousness, I really have been busy these past few months, and a blog about something that could have killed me as a kid is a little low on my current priority list. As of now, I'm living in Waterloo, Ontario, attending the University of Waterloo for computer engineering. Yeah, I'm a keener. As you can imagine, engineering is no walk in the park, so obviously, I nearly forgot about the blog. But as you can see, I'm back. I remembered to visit the storm drain the kids from Camdon Forest told me about. It was out in a clearing between the wooded areas, nearly a marsh. Unfortunately, I found absolutely nothing, save for a turtle that retreated into his built-in home. I snapped some pics of the pipe, which I've posted as well. Also, let me tell you, it's not a storm drain like they said it was. What I saw was a simple pipe, possibly to channel the access water from the marsh. When I returned from Camdon, however, I simply kept putting off uploading everything until I forgot all about my blog. It just didn't seem important anymore. Please forgive me. It wasn't until only recently that I'm now interested in my case again. On September 10th, I received an email from this email address, returntheb@hotmail.com. Funny, am I right? Well, it gets better. I'm going to copy and paste the exact email this guy sent me. Dear Elliot, my dear boy, you see, this story may or may not be true, but it could happen. There are many slots for airtime. If you have money, you can have access to public TV channels. Some public access channels share airtime, like EWTN, religious channels based out of Michigan. That shows Catholic-based programming, but during off hours have independent shows or just blue screens. Cable networks have Amity channels available for rent space. So, the scenario of a pedo renting a channel on basic TV is not as far-fetched as you might think. However, public access TV is widely reviewed and can be terminated at any time. These are the rules for the United States, not for Canada, where this story takes place. So, this is happening in the U.S. The pedo would be tracked and arrested immediately. Yes, this story could happen, but it's unlikely. 100 fuzzy hugs, Mr. Bear. Now, obviously, this letter is fake and sounds almost corrupted, but still, I'd like to thank whoever sent it, though they could use some English lessons. Just reading this letter creeped me out, but because of it, I'm now full of this new interest to continue my blog. I guess it's just funny to try to pursue the mystery I've always questioned. Now, my roommates know all about this. They thought the letter was real and actually seemed more scared than I was for a second, but then I shrugged it off, so he did too. I mean, what are the chances of this being real? How could Mr. Bear know all about public access TV and about when I went to Camdon on those occasions? More or less know my email or me, still interested in the seller. It's fantasy, totally. I'm going to send a reply to return the B. Wow, just looking at that email address, you can tell someone wanted to freak me out. It didn't really work, though. Although, whoever sent it, thank you for sparking my interest back in the full matter. Maybe I can find out more about what happened to Mr. Bear, hopefully, because although I don't buy the email, part of me still feels a little anxious. Thank you to all those who are still following me and have become avid fans. You're also why I'm choosing to continue this. Thanks, guys. November 7th, 2010. Wow, I can't believe this blog hasn't been deleted yet. I haven't posted anything for so long. I have my reasons, and I'd rather not discuss them yet, but it's been a rather traumatic year for me. Some of you were right. I shouldn't have gone back, trying to relive the mysteries of my childhood, but I couldn't resist. It's been over a year since my last post, and a lot has happened. let's recap where I'm at right now with regards to the whole Mr. Bear incident. returntheb@hotmail.com is no longer in use. I tried replying to the email, but I got no reply. I tried again a while back, but still no response. I've actually moved up to Ottawa, capital of Canada, for those who don't know, for university, so I haven't been back to Caledon, or back in the Peel region, for a while. I had my reasons for leaving, as you can guess why. I've had to make a new email account because people keep prank emailing me, pretending to be Mr. Bear. Thanks a lot, guys. Not. Why have I ventured back to this blog? Mitchell Wilson, remember my dad's ex-cop friend, gave me a phone call on October 23rd about a tape that was found in a branch of the Brenton Public Library. Brenton is my hometown, in case you hadn't picked up on that. He claimed he isn't allowed to discuss the contents of the tape with me, as it's still evidence, but he asked me to come check it out when I return home. That tape got the gears grinding again because we all know what was on the last tape I saw. I can only imagine what can be on this one. I'm guessing it must have something to do with Caledon Local 21. I guess I just wanted to say that I'm continuing this blog, and thanks for everyone who's still following it. I don't know when the next entry will be, but when I see the tape, I'll write what I find. I don't know what to expect, but the idea of seeing another tape has gotten me interested in the whole mystery all over again. Update, January 21st, 2011. It's been a long year for me. University has been giving me the usual sleepless nights, especially since I transferred to Ottawa, which is the place to party. Yeah, right. But now I'm back home with my dad in Brampton, the town I grew up in. I got home on the 18th of December, and I've been visiting my friends and family, or at least that's what I would rather have done. Now that the festive holiday cheer that I usually have at this time of the month is absent. To answer the hundreds of emails and comments I got, yes, I did see the tape that my dad's friend promised to show me. These tapes, however, act as a curse. I want to know more, yet I want to forget everything. I couldn't help it. I needed to see the tapes. Not only for myself, but for all you guys who are just as intrigued as I am by that ominous man in the bear suit from my past. However, after viewing those tapes, I feel that pit of dread deep inside me once again. That feeling where I know that all those kids in those videos are dead. That I could have been one of those kids, and that humanity is a dark, dark place. If you haven't skipped this paragraph for the juicier details below, thanks for listening to my rambling. On January 1st, I called Mitchell and asked if there was time for him to come by and show me the tapes. Things are pretty slow at the station because of a snowstorm, so he said he could come down any time that day. The tapes were located at a branch not too far from me, so I braved the slushy roads and terrible Brampton driving and made my way to Peel, the original police station located in Bromella City Center. I met Wilson at the front desk, where he led me to the second floor and into a small office. He instructed me to have a seat and wait while he went to get the tape. Before leaving the office, he turned to me and said, "I know you're curious, but are you sure you want to see this?" Of course I did, or at least I thought I did. Besides, Wilson's friend had pulled a lot of strings to get me in here, and I didn't want the opportunity to go to waste. This particular station had 2 tapes on hand. I was only able to watch a few minutes of footage, however, because the second tape was apparently too damaged to be played in a VCR. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 30. Mr. Bear never ceases to disturb me, especially after what almost happened to me when I was younger. The episode took place outside the forest at dusk, making it slightly hard to see, especially considering the quality of the film, a trademark of anything on Khaled and Local 21. The episode started with the camera being held in the paws of Mr. Bear, aiming it at himself. That bear mask, it looks more sinister in the shadows of the trees. The unmistakable muffled voice spoke up. "Hello, children. Today, I'll be doing a wonderful thing for my friends. I'll be delivering them to a faraway land where they will surely be happy." Mr. Bear turned the camera around to show an ATV with an attached trailer. But what stood out the most was the trailer contained 7 motionless children lying side by side. "This here is the first load, but more will be on their way soon." Mr. Bear turned around and pointed the camera at a large burlap tarp spread on the ground. He picked the tarp up, revealing a large hole that must have been about 12 feet deep and maybe 15 feet wide. The rest of the episode consisted of Mr. Bear taking each kid and dropping them into the hole. I asked Wilson if they were dead, to which he shook his head and replied, "Not yet." Soon all the kids were in the pit. Some were in awkward positions due to being tossed in, but they remained unconscious. "The vitamin C will surely help these children on the great journey that awaits them," Mr. Bear mentioned as he panned the camera towards multiple bottles of gasoline beside a bush. The camera zoomed into the bottles as Mr. Bear hummed before the episode ended. Wilson revealed to me that these were 7 of the 16 victims found burnt to a crisp. The gasoline is what the man playing Mr. Bear used to light them on fire. A pit full of burning children. Who would do such a thing? That feeling of dread found me once again, and I realized that I could have been one of those kids. Wilson then explained to me that they had previously lied. The other tape, confiscated by the police, did indeed work, and contained the filming of the actual burning. However, he felt that I wouldn't be able to handle the disturbing and graphic nature of the episode. You know what? Maybe I can't. I don't even want to see it. I'm satisfied for now, but I just need some time to get myself together. The thing is, the man who ran Khaled and Local 21 is still out there. More to come soon. Once upon a time, there lived a little boy named Elliot. Elliot was a clever boy who loved playing with his friends. One day, he watched a lovely television show about a bear and his children friends. The children loved helping each other, as good children should, but they also loved the bear. The bear loved the children since the children were so good at helping him, and the fallen angel. The children and the bear wanted to play together forever with the help of their angel friend, but the fallen angel needed more help, so the children had to give the ultimate sacrifice. Because that's what friends do, Elliot. They help each other. Help us, Elliot. Burn with us, Elliot. I want you, Elliot. He wants you, Elliot. Come back to my cellar, Elliot. Please help with sugar and icing on top. Mr. B. INRI. Update. April 5th, 2011. I wanted to update again. I truly did. However, certain circumstances have turned me off to the whole Khaled and Local 21 thing. I've since had hundreds of emails about my blog and was even in contact with a magazine about my story. But now was the time to come clean with everyone, where I've been for an entire year. The story of Pandora's box is true, and I opened it. When I reached the second tape in the possession of the police branch. The other subject I'd like to address is the number of joke, fake emails I've been getting from people claiming to be Mr. Bear. Let's start with the second tape, as that's what traumatized me into stopping my search temporarily. After a few weeks of playing silent, I decided to ask Mitchell Wilson if I could view that infamous second tape he had talked about. I don't know why. I just felt that viewing the tape would give me some closure. Wilson was obviously reluctant to show me, but I was persistent. He gave me an offer. If I was still interested by the time I turned 20, he would show me the tape. Not being able to do much else, I just played the waiting game. By the time my 20th birthday rolled around, I was definitely still interested in viewing the tape. I gave Wilson a call, during which he admitted that he had hoped I would forget about it, and asked me again, but I'm not taking no for an answer. You really don't need to see it, he kept telling me, but I did need to see it. I had to at this point. Sure, he invited me to the Bramelow Station branch one Monday afternoon. Having watched every Saw film and videos of animals in a slaughterhouse during my ethics class, I felt sure I'd be able to handle whatever the tape could throw at me. I was wrong. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 31. When Wilson went to collect the tape from evidence, the officer in charge of the evidence room shook his head at me, his face saying, "What are you doing?" Wilson explained that this tape included the last known episode of Mr. Bear's Cellar. I rightfully assumed that I would be seeing the fate of the children, and began to feel dread. The episode opened up inside a forest, the usual one from the previous episodes. That fact took me a while to realize because it was night. The trees and leaves just looked like shapes dancing around in the darkness. A faint glow of light was present on the right side of the screen. There wasn't any apparent audio. It appeared to be a windy night, yet the trees weren't making any noise. Slowly, the camera began to pan towards the glow, revealing smoke rising from a hole with the tips of flames peeking over the top. Wilson paused at this point. "Are you sure you want to see this?" he asked me. I insisted on it, even though a voice in my head was telling me not to. The video continued. The cameraman moved towards the hole, showing a pit of fire. This was the hole that had been seen in the previous episode. Only this time it was filled with shapes. I could see shapes moving around, fluttering, flailing, some motionless. I knew perfectly well what they were. The camera began to adjust to the light and burning flesh. Red, black, a blur of surreal movement and colors. I wish I could forget what I saw, but you can't forget a scene like that. This was not a horror movie, this was reality. Human beings were being killed in a horrifying way, a fate that I could have potentially met. The video suddenly cut to dawn, the camera now positioned further away from the hole. The fire was out, however, there was still smoke rising up. A figure was up ahead. I recognized it right away. The Mr. Bear suit was laid out on the ground, empty. It looked just as unnerving. The suit was laid in the shape of a cross. The cameraman did a lap around the suit, treating it like a treasured artifact. Placed at the head of the suit was a sign. In bold red letters, INRI was printed there. The cameraman looked back to the end of the suit, zooming in on the bear's face. The episode finally ended. I was speechless. It was like a dream. You can find a lot of terrible things on the internet, but I had never seen anything like this. Wilson asked if I was okay, and I replied with a shaky, "Yeah." I assured him as we left that I was fine and that the video gave me some closure over the whole incident. He didn't seem too confident in me, but he left it at that. He was right, though. I had nightmares for weeks. I gave up. I didn't care about the whole thing anymore. A sick man burned a bunch of kids alive, attracting them with a fake kids TV channel. I could have been one of those kids, yet I'm still here. Suppose I should be grateful, but I just feel guilty. Am I still here because of pure luck? 10 months later, I'm back, but now I need to address something else. My email has been flooded with messages. Some people ask for more details. Some ask if I can upload the tapes, and some people email me claiming to be Mr. Bear. First, I can't get the tapes uploaded, as they're A, in police possession as evidence, and B, I have no idea how to transfer VHS onto a computer. As for the people pretending to be Mr. Bear, you're not fooling me. When you have dozens of people pretending to be the same person, it doesn't work. I've seen the fake Caledon Local 21 YouTube channel, which is cute, but still not real. Even more annoying is the fact that someone hacked my account just to put up some demented poem about me in this blog. I'll leave it in the entry above this one, just to show you guys. I have contacted the webmaster about the entry and was told that it was posted on Halloween. Oh, so spooky. Attached to the email, paintwithb@aol.com, which I assume is another joke email. I'm over episode 31 now. The image that I saw will stick with me for a while, but I want to do one last hurrah. I will get into contact with Mitchell Wilson again, and hopefully get set up with the tapes in the possession of the other Peel Region Police Department branches. I'll try to update you guys as soon as I can. I'm sure this won't be the last you hear of me. Thanks to everyone who will read this. Elliot. I wish he would have stayed home, away from this cruel world that we live in. Dear readers, children shouldn't roam this world alone, but we can't keep them in their nest forever. My son left his room one night to the enchanted chirping outside his window, and I knew what this was, but only from my years of studying this creature. You see, there is a monster that wanders around the globe, preying on innocent children, watching, waiting. I remember fondly. It was September 15th, 1983. That was the year my wife and I escaped the busy world of New York to live our lives in the country. North Dakota. We lived happily there for several years until I discovered my one true love, studying the seed eater. The seed eater is a disturbed bird-human creature that roams the forest, stalking children, abducting them to be part of the legend. On June 19th, 1987, I saw it sitting in my tree on the front lawn. I was in a daze when I saw it, my destiny beckoning me to it. It said, follow it, love it, learn it. Around the same time, 2 weeks later, I awoke to a strange tapping noise on my front window. I knew it was him. I ran out of the house to see it sitting in the tree, just staring into my eyes. I was about to cry from the majesty of it. I remember it telling me it wanted my help. I would do anything for it. On April 3rd, 1988, the seed eater arrived at my window again. I was overjoyed. It said it was time, and I remember. You see, the seed eater devours children to keep itself alive, indulging in their youth to live forever. I remember the little boy. What was his name? Oh, I suppose it doesn't matter. I remember going to his house and just knocking on the door at about 4:30 a.m., but nobody would answer. I saw the bay window. It was the boy's room. I went to tell the seed eater. Let's just call him S.E. from now on. He told me how he could get his attention the next day. A couple of weeks went by, and the stretch of the flesh was getting disgusting. Where was the S.E.? The parents of the boy put up a lost poster last week. I wonder why they didn't worry for the first 2 weeks. Oh well, I wasn't concerned. On May 14th, 1988, the boy was nothing but bloated, rotting flesh, and the S.E. was nowhere to be found. I guessed my services were no longer needed. May 15th, 1988, he came again. He took the body and requested another. May 16th, 88. 6 kids killed. 6 kids devoured. 6 more requested. May 18th, 1988. How ever losing people makes me wonder. The killer monster, Seed Eater, came tonight. He said kids weren't doing the trick anymore. He wanted something bigger. If you're reading this, you may be the only hope to finding out the truth of this thing. In my room, there is a journal. On page 49, you'll discover how to take the life out of this monster. But he's had me under a tight death grip. I couldn't do it. But maybe you'll have the strength. More strength than me, at least. Goodbye, everyone. I hope being eaten is what I brought on to myself. Well, as you know, as children, we imagine scary creatures that hide under our beds and in our closets. Well, these creatures are real. The monsters were here before you, or whoever lived there before you. This piece of land is their territory, and this house is on that land. So they make themselves comfy. They hide under beds and in closets to simulate the caves they used to live in. Some of these creatures have even become famous through various creepypastas. Some of these include Bob, the Rake, the Seed Eater, Mr. Widemouth, and even the Slender Man. In reality, they are not frightening or even inherently aggressive. They just protect their homes from intruders. They're actually more scared of us than we are of them. Some humans make friends with these creatures. Some are even sent here as young babies disguised as humans. How do I know this? Because I know some people who are. So the next time you check under your bed or in your closet, remember, it's their home. Don't disrespect them. Don't antagonize them. Be respectful of their property. If we're scared of them or think of them as monsters, remember, to them, we are the real monsters. Everybody was alarmed about the epidemic of clown sightings throughout the country. Everybody except Melody. The autumn of 2016 didn't bring forth a sinister strain of influenza, but brought forth a swarm of men in clown costumes who were around chasing and scaring people. Some stores actually ceased the sale of clown masks. Some schools had canceled after-school activities. Football teams were forced to practice inside the gymnasium. There was even a clown sighting on the local golf course in Melody's Town in Lynn, Massachusetts. The clown emerged out of the Linwood reservations and onto the greens of Gannon Golf Course in Lynn, and proceeded to chase a party of silver-haired men in polo shirts with cigars in their mouths. How confused they were, for the clown was not wearing appropriate golf attire. It showed a mouthful of fangs, while its curly red hair bounced in abundance with its charge. The golfers dispersed in different directions, some diving into their golf carts, one making a vain attempt to fit himself inside the second hole, while another peed his trousers. Onlookers had reported this while watching from a safe distance. The clown's giggles traveled across the green as it ran back to the tree line of Linwoods. On the night of October 21st, 2016, Melody was strutting down the side of a dozy road in a lesser populated part of New England. She was cold. She didn't have any pants on, only black panties and translucent stockings that went up above the knee. The autumn night air was sowing goosebumps into her bare thighs, which jiggled ever so slightly while she walked, tapping the pavement with her high heels. Technically, she was wearing a skirt, but it acted more so as a shirt, barely falling down past her belly. The skirt was an extension to a black crop top that had silver buttons on it. Yes, Melody was out trying to attract a clown. The street lights, which were being cast down like the headlights of a Roswell UFO, made Melody's beige-colored skin seem tanner, and also accentuated the goosebumps on her bare shoulders. She kept looking over her shoulder, but all she could see was the rows of streetlights along the expanse of malnourished wood. Not even mosquitoes swarmed beneath every streetlight. Between the woods and the road, there ran one of those foot-high stone walls that New England is stitched up with. She kept looking into the woods, the short stone wall making her feel taller than she was, and she saw no organs in the skeletal trees. Her legs and feet ached. She was a long way from home, but she needed to see a clown. She needed a clown to see her. Something about the fear excited her. She wanted to see somebody that didn't belong where they were, and nobody seemed to belong on a desolate night, especially a clown, or especially her. She reached into her purse and retrieved a bicycle horn. She held it lackadaisically over her shoulder and honked it. The honk echoed down the street, with the night perverting its echo. She stopped honking the bicycle horn the instant she heard a twig breaking from the cavities of the tree line smile. She gulped, the muscles in her throat working like a car brake. She came to a stop. She looked ahead. She was ready, but also nervous. She felt her chest undulating with the quickening of her breath. Another twig broke. Already she was wondering what color hair the clown would have, if it would be wearing makeup or a mask. Oh, she hoped it was a clown wearing white makeup. Her excitement deflated like a balloon. A dirty old farmer was creeping out of the tree line, stepping over the little stone wall with his double-barrel shotgun at his hip. The way his mouth concaved on itself suggested that he didn't have all of his teeth. He wore denim overalls over a beige and brown checkered shirt. The top of his head was bald and reflected the streetlights, but hedges of silver wool poofed up behind his ears. Melody batted her eyes while the little farmer crept out into the street. "I hear you, you damn dirty clown," the farmer sneered into the darkness on the side of the street. He hadn't seen Melody yet, but he certainly heard her bicycle horn. An important detail to note about the farmer was that he was smaller than Melody. Melody was in heels, and the farmer might have been around 5'2". She wasn't sure if it was safe to approach him because he had a gun, and he also appeared very disheveled. "Where are you?" he sneered, swiveling in place, his demeanor flattening when he saw Melody. Melody was not a clown. "Young lady, what are you doing out here?" "Oh, just walking," Melody said, looking like a damsel. "What are you doing, mister?" "I'm hunting these damn clowns," he sneered. Melody raised her brow. "Did you hear that clown horn? They were honking out here," he asked. "That was me." What were you honking out here for?" Melody's body recoiled as giggles ran through it. "I'm trying to attract a clown," she rolled her eyes. "What are you trying to do that for?" The way that Melody paused should have been enough of an answer for the farmer, but Melody's damsel in distress facade was corrupted by a guilty expression. Still, the farmer wasn't connecting the dots. "And what are you dressed like that for, young lady? Don't you know it ain't awful warm tonight?" "I know, but no clown's gonna want a girl that doesn't slay." The farmer was frozen in confusion for a few seconds. "You got a thing for clowns, young lady?" the farmer asked, with disappointment already in his voice. To this, Melody got a ditzy kind of shrug. The farmer sighed. "Anyway, what's your name? I gotta get you home." "Melody, you don't have to get me home," she said, and asked only out of politeness, "What's your name?" "I'm Morris, the clown hunter," he said proudly. "Have you caught any yet?" Melody asked, to which the farmer shook his head. "Although I seen one creeping through my pumpkin patch." "And," Melody said, eyeing Morris's shotgun, "do you intend to shoot one?" "I intend to catch the damn dirty clown who's been creeping through my pumpkin patch. My cat, Ursula, was growling at the window at 4 this morning. Nobody disturbs my Ursula, especially no damn clown." "I'm looking for the dirty ones, too," Melody said. "The first rule of clown hunting is no laughing," Morris said, while the two of them crept through the crooked woods. Melody held the flashlight, and Morris held the shotgun, with both of them being very mindful of how their feet crunched down on the dead leaves. His breath smelled of cough drops and good Irish whiskey, but he wasn't slurring his words at all. "Then there's the second rule. Never wave back at 'em. Rule 3, do not accept a balloon or flowers from them. Rule 4 is don't comfort a sad clown. They're only looking for your pity. They're faking it. They want you to let your guard down." "Morris," Melody said, rolling her eyes, "I know all this already." "What's Rule 7, then?" "Never go clown hunting alone," Melody said, making a lucky guess. "Which is why you have a lot of explaining to do, young lady. I can do it 'cause I'm older, but a young lady like yourself shouldn't be out here clown hunting all alone." "Tell me, Morris, how do you track a clown?" "You often find them at playgrounds after dark when all the kiddies go home," he explained. "That's why I'm leading us to the playground by the woods, right beyond the tree line over there." They chanced upon this playground after the walk in the woods continued. Melody's flashlight shone forward, but it seemed to be shunned by the brown and rusting playground. The rusty slide, the pillars of the monkey bars, the swing set that creaked in the wheezing autumn breeze was all so disgusted by the premise of Melody's flashlight. Still, the pair tiptoed on to the mulch. Morris sniffed the air. He cranked his head up and turned it slowly. Melody gasped. "I should have thought of coming here." Morris ignored her and crept forward. He walked his shotgun, and his face cringed in the darkness because of how hard he was concentrating. He didn't notice Melody starting to swing on the pole that held up the swing set. She pole danced in the residue of the streetlights that glowered over so weakly from the parking lot. She didn't care how cold the pole was on her bare thighs. She hooked her legs around it and twirled while the swings on the swing set creaked. Morris crept himself into a trance. His shotgun seemed to lose its power in his hand as he crept across the mulch towards the parking lot that had no clowns. He was unaware that Melody was dancing behind him. "No clowns here," he muttered to himself. Morris found no clowns after walking the perimeter of the playground's parking lot. He even gave the mud surrounding the cement an eye the Greek fates would have envied, and still he found no clown tracks. Tired from dancing, Melody rejoined him, and the two continued on. Morris carried the gun, and Melody carried her ass. She was enunciating that part of her body while she walked, and Morris lacked any sort of ass himself. He was wearing those overalls anyway, so it didn't matter. They entered the woods again. "I'm never going to get a clown," Melody stomped her foot. This made Morris pause. His mouth was recalculating how many teeth it had left before he spoke. "Now, there's no reason to get upset, young lady. Nobody catches a clown on their first day." He smacked his lips and waddled over to his partner. She was grimacing. She was pouting the way that only celebrities can pout. She was so upset that she didn't flinch when the farmer put his sandpaper hand on her shoulder. "It's all right, young lady. Those damn dirty clowns are sneaky bastards, you know. In fact, I think you're brave for even coming out. It's nice to see young folks interested in keeping the community safe." Morris was giving Melody a sincere expression. He wanted her to be okay, but she either didn't see his sympathetic look or she didn't care. She looked up at the ceiling of prickly branches as if the branches lied to her. She had shaved her legs for this. She felt let down, disappointed, betrayed, rejected by the clowns. "Tell you what," Morris stammered, "you and we're going to catch ourselves one of those clowns." Melody was too agitated to acknowledge him. She had folded her arms and kept her gaze attentively on the branches above. "I just want a clown." Her voice shook defeatedly. Morris wanted to say something to console her, but his tongue and lips were once again recalculating how many teeth he had left. All he could do was escort her through the barren woods. They cleared the skeleton of an old house, only finding cobwebs and rocking chairs that hadn't been sat in for hundreds of years. And their legs could have told stories of the time when witches supposedly existed. Melody didn't care what the grandmother rocking chairs had to say about witches. She only cared about the clowns. She wanted a clown. She needed a clown. She didn't even care what the farmer had to say about it. She just needed it, and there were no clowns in sight. "Slow down, little girl," Morris regretfully ordered. He put his hand on her shoulder again. There was defeat in her face and concern in his. They walked back to Morris's pumpkin patch, and he showed her the clown tracks that zigzagged between the pumpkins. He pointed out each footprint with his shotgun, and every footprint represented one giant clown shoe. This seemed to only make Melody sadder, though. Seeing this, and seeing the long expression falling on Melody's face, Morris offered to make her a cup of hot cocoa. "Come on in and warm up," Morris said with all his teeth. Melody followed him into the shack beside the pumpkin patch, which Morris casually called a farmhouse. It smelled like mold and mothballs, and seemed in no better shape than the house in the woods. The kitchen had a window that looked out over the pumpkin patch. It was only out of politeness that Melody asked if Morris ran a good business selling his pumpkins. He went through the politics of pumpkins while preparing 2 cups of hot cocoa, pausing to ask, "Fluff or marshmallow?" "Both," Melody cooed dreamily. The fluff that bobbed atop the hot chocolate reminded her of white clown makeup, and it made her woefully sad. Morris had a funny way of consuming hot chocolate. It injected a Botox of delight into him, and his face went cartoonish with glee. It made his eyes pop. He licked his lips at every sip. "Are you warm enough, young lady?" he asked, unaware about the brushstrokes of fluff atop his lips. "Yes," Melody giggled. Well, no clown tiptoed through Morris's pumpkin patch that night. The sun did come up, unexpectedly, and Morris had breakfast for the two of them. Melody offered to do the dishes, and Morris offered to drive her home afterwards. They got into Morris's rusty pickup truck. The chickadees were chirping songs of condolences to Melody. Melody had come to find the smell of mold, mothballs, and cough drops endearing, and she was glad that the pickup truck smelled like all three. Morris was a good man who had good old man smells about him. She tried taking it all in while she helped navigate Morris down the highway and into the suburbs where people were raking leaves and walking their dogs. "And you take a right here," Melody said. Morris did so, bringing the truck down another quaint street. "And you're going to go straight past that church." "All right, young lady," Morris said, speaking to keep his teeth in order and not speaking to speak. "Wait," Melody cried. Morris stopped the truck in the middle of the street. He saw it too, their faces awed behind the windshield as they watched Misfit the birthday clown walk across a lawn and into the backyard of somebody's house. The sound of children crying erupted when he disappeared into the backyard. Neither Morris or Melody had to speak. They unbuckled the truck's doors and burst open. Morris grabbed his double-barrel shotgun, and Melody ran her hands down her outfit, smoothing out any wrinkles. She looked down at her assets while Morris checked to see if his shotgun was in order. He clicked it back up, and the two hurried over to the house that the clown had disappeared behind. Morris walked as if his shotgun was leading the way, and Melody walked as if her body was leading the way. They walked over the lawn as the sound of children cheering and squeaking over each other filled the morning. Little Jimmy's parents thought they only had ordered a clown for their son's 7th birthday party, so they and the other adults never expected to see a short, grungy-looking farmer with a gun and a scantily dressed woman appear in their backyard. The kids were all sitting on the grass, watching Misfit the birthday clown tie a balloon animal, when Morris and Melody burst into the backyard. The adults gasped, the children screamed, and the little girls in terror, the little boys in confusion. Tears had already started flowing when Morris pointed the shotgun right at Misfit the birthday clown. "Put 'em up, you damn dirty clown, or else I'll pop you like a balloon," Morris sneered. "Mr. Clown!" Melody threw her pleading voice into the air. She jumped in place. The children started flocking towards their parents, while Misfit the birthday clown scrambled into the house. There was a pleading no from a mother that went ignored. Melody and Morris followed Misfit the birthday clown. How uncoordinated the clown ran. It was difficult to run in those oversized shoes. "Come here, Mr. Clown," Melody called through the chase. "Come on." "Get back here," Morris howled. Misfit the birthday clown burst out the front door and onto the front yard. Morris fired and missed, a round of buckshot going into someone's car. Melody shimmied through the smell of smoke. It was difficult for her to run, too, because she was trying to keep herself together as she went. "Clown, look at me," she cried as Misfit the birthday clown got into his car. Melody banged on the door, but the car sped away. Morris ran into the middle of the street and fired at the car's tires as they screeched away. So the pair stood there as the children cried. It wasn't long before the sounds of sirens came. Melody was catching her breath while she could smell the farmer's cough drop breath working in overdrive as well. They looked and watched the clown escape, for it was all they could do as the flashing blue and red lights appeared behind them. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast sea, never remaining in one location for very long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to the various homes we lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear, pointless, chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment that we rented in Pennsylvania, so on and so forth. But there is one set of memories which remains as clear as glass, as though they were made just yesterday. I often wonder whether they are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring. But in my heart, I know they're real. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine, population 643. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the first 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute of my father's workplace. The day after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play and more fever for at least the next 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my stuff was already sealed away in boxes, leaving my room bare. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day. They served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed just around the corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I didn't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with the mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth because his mouth was so large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body. His head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. You kinda look like a Furby, I said, as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. Furby? What's a Furby? He asked. I shrugged. You know, the toy. The little robot with the big ears. You can stroke and feed them, almost like a real pet. Oh, Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity. You don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend. I remember Mr. Widemouth disappeared every time my mother stopped by to check on me. I lay under your bed, he later explained. I don't want your parents to see me, because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore. We didn't do much during those first few days. Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and the pictures they contained. The 3rd or 4th morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile. I have a new game we can play, he said. We have to wait until your mother comes to check on you, because she can't see us play. It's a secret game. After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under my bed and tugged my hand. We have to go to the room at the end of the hallway, he said. I objected at first, as my parents had forbidden me from leaving my bed without permission, but Mr. Widemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across it and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. He then beckoned me to look out at the ground below. We were on the 2nd story of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle the drop was further than 2 stories due to the incline. I like to play pretend up here, Mr. Widemouth explained. I pretend that there is a big, soft trampoline below the window, and I jump. If you pretend hard enough, you bounce back up like a feather. I want you to try. I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism darted through my thoughts as I looked down and considered the possibilities. It's a long drop, I said, but that's all part of the fun. It wouldn't be exciting if it was only a short drop. If it were only that way, you may as well just bounce on a real trampoline. I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window on something unseen by human eye. But the realist in me prevailed. "Maybe some other time," I said. "I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt." Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment. "If you say so." He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning, Mr. Widemouth arrived, holding a small box. "I want to teach you how to juggle," he said. "There are some things in here you can use to practice before I start giving you lessons." I looked into the box. It was full of knives. "My parents would kill me," I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room, objects that my parents would never allow me to touch. "I'll get spanked and grounded for a year." Mr. Widemouth frowned. "It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it." I pushed the box away. "I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw around in the air." Mr. Widemouth frowned, and it deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there for the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was underneath me. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up in the night, saying that he had made a real trampoline under the window, a big one that I couldn't see in the dark. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came one morning and told me I had her permission to walk outside. She thought the fresh air might do me good, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning for the feel of sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me. "I have something I want you to see," he said. I must have given him a weird look, because then he said, "It's safe, I promise." I followed him to the beginnings of a deer trail, which ran through the woods behind the house. "This is an important path. I've had a lot of friends about your age. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day I hope to take you there." And returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond the trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, the last load of things had been packed into the moving truck. I would soon be in the cab of that truck, sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I was leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that his intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he said. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. My father and I were in the truck at 4 a.m. He was hoping to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime, with the help of an endless supply of coffee and a 6-pack of energy drinks. He seemed more like a man about to run a marathon, not one about to spend 2 days sitting very still. "Early enough for you?" he asked, with a hint of sympathy. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is the last move, son, I promise. I know it's hard on you, as sick as you've been. Once Daddy gets promoted, we can settle down, and you can make some friends." I opened my eyes as we backed out of the driveway. Mr. Widemouth's silhouette was in my bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn into the main road, at which point he gave a pitiful wave goodbye, steak knife in one hand. I didn't wave back. Years later, I returned to New Vineyard. The piece of land our house had stood on was empty, except for the foundation, as the building had burned down a few years after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed the deer trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind a tree and scare the living bejesus out of me, but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone. somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at the New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children. Andrew woke up with a start. He knew what had happened, and his heart sank. The sound of shattering downstairs did the same to his nerves. It had come. After weeks of watching and stalking him, the creature had finally decided to break in. The patio door, made completely of glass, provided it with the perfect entrance. Andrew lay in bed in the blackness, illuminated only by the small amount of light the moon provided through the space between the curtains. He listened for the creature to see if it was inside, secretly praying that everything would be silent. The terrifying cracking of glass under its feet confirmed his worst fear. It had finally made its way into his home. With this crushing realization, Andrew, now shaking, grabbed his baseball bat and crept downstairs. Deeper into the darkness, he was determined to confront the thing once and for all, secretly hoping, though, that it would run away when it saw him, as it normally did. Andrew stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. At first, all he heard was the cracking of glass under the creature's feet. Then, for the first time, Andrew heard it, breathing heavily as if its throat was blocked with phlegm. The hideous monster snarled and clicked, gradually getting closer to Andrew. Now, out of the kitchen, the creature was finally off the glass. It walked almost silently now, strangely more agile than it looked, especially considering how clumsily it ran away. Andrew realized what he needed to do. He grasped his weapon tighter and froze, unable to move. He knew he needed to attack it, but he just couldn't. Its teeth, its eyes, its skin, they were human, but not quite. It was in the living room now, and edging closer by the moment. Yet Andrew was still too terrified to move. Even if it didn't have arms, the creature was the embodiment of terror to Andrew. Andrew stood at the bottom of the stairs, shaking. He heard the creature getting ever closer, the sickening sound of its distorted breathing, amplified by the almost pitch-black darkness. It was nearly at him now. He had one chance to kill it, and he wasn't going to waste it. The creature stepped into the doorway to the stairs. Andrew was hidden just to the left. He swung at full force, hitting the thing in the chest with the bat. It staggered back, then stopped and looked at Andrew, its tiny, wild eyes staring into his soul. Andrew felt a deep fear, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The creature then let out a gurgling hiss, baring all of its sickening, deformed teeth in the process. It kicked Andrew in the guts, winding him. He fell to the floor in pain, unable to breathe, then rolled onto his back and scuffled up against the wall just behind him. The creature watched him until he reached the wall, at which point it walked toward him and looked down at him as if judging him, lying there helpless. It then stomped on his shin, snapping the bone. Tears began to stream down Andrew's eyes. The pain was so intense, he thought he was going to vomit. Andrew, now incapacitated, had nowhere to go, no way to fight. The creature placed its foot on his stomach, pressing down, ripping into his flesh with its long, dirty toenails. With the creature's foot so completely inside his stomach, Andrew started to cough up blood. Tears streamed down his face. He passed out from the pain, and then passed away. The creature loomed over what was now his bloody corpse. It descended its face towards Andrew, then tore away a bloody piece of flesh from his chin, dislocating one side of its jaw in the process. The creature continued to tear and eviscerate Andrew's corpse until everything it could stomach had been devoured. It then left, calmly, silently, with a pure and deep hatred in its heart. It departed the same way it had come in, through the broken patio door. Another perspective on Bob. Hey guys, normally creepy shit doesn't happen to me, despite living in the weird New Jersey. I guess I can't really say that anymore, considering I've had the worst frigging week of my life. In a way, I brought all of this on myself, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Since I've lurked for so long, it's only fair I tell you guys what happened. So a week ago, my birthday, I just turned 18 and decided I wanted to screw around and look for ghosts. I would have hung out with my friends, but I wasn't in the mood to be a third wheel. If only I just sucked it up and dealt with it. Instead, I shoved my phone and my flashlight in my hoodie pocket and snuck out the back door. I really didn't expect to find much, or I would have brought a proper weapon with me. I guess it's sort of dumb to think about it in retrospect. I remember glancing at the clock. It was around 11 or 12 at night when I left. It was pretty dark because there was no moon. I figured if I was going to see anything cool, it was going to be now. Now, I wasn't just walking around the forest, herpa-derping. There's actually a pretty sketchy cemetery about 10 minutes up the road from my house that's been around for the past couple of 100 years. It's also a spot that practices green burial, where they, put the bodies in a biodegradable casket and send it on its way in the dirt. Well, my uncle owns a plot of land the cemetery is built on, and being the cheap bastard that he is, most bodies buried there end up thrown in there by themselves. I figured there must be some kind of ghost pissed off about having such a shitty resting place who roams around the cemetery at night. I guess I was thinking I could point him to where my uncle lives and start a haunting, just for shits and grins, Probably doesn't work that way, but I wasn't expecting to find something anyway. I finally made my way there and was about to go through the gate to the cemetery when I saw some kind of gray-colored guy thing in the nature trail next to the cemetery. And yeah, I shit you not, my uncle thought it was a great idea to put a nature trail next to the cemetery. I'm a little nervous at this point because I can't think of anybody other than me crazy enough to go out in a place like this at night. There isn't even a car around, so whoever this was, they must have walked there, just like I did. I shouted out at the dude, thinking maybe it was some stoner smoking or another ghost hunter. They didn't say anything. All I could hear was this sickly sound of wheezing. Thought maybe they needed help and were out of breath from running away from something, so I took a deep breath and started walking down the trail. I whipped out my flashlight to light up whoever was down there, only to stop dead in my tracks. Whatever the thing was, it didn't have any arms or clothes on. Basically, I noped right out of there, ran the whole way home, and locked every door in my house. My mom was pretty pissed that I snuck out, and figured I was on a bad trip when I told her about some naked no-armed thing stalking the cemetery. I don't blame her, but I wish she'd believed me or at least humored me so I could carry around one of those Rambo knives that she collects. I was pretty shaken up. This freak of nature had to know where I lived because I didn't run that fast. Still, I rationalized with myself. I didn't see the guy behind me, and I didn't hear that horrible wheezing sound, so I decided I shouldn't worry about it. couple of days later, I was sleeping normal again, till I saw that thing. My front door was open, so my dog could go in and out as he pleased. Her name's Piggy, and she's an inside dog, but house-trained, so she'll go outside when she needs to use the bathroom. Dogs always have a place they like to go, and her spot was smack dab in the middle of a field in front of my house. Piggy ran outside, and a few minutes later, I heard her barking. I was a little confused because she normally never barks, so I figured there must have been a stray cat around or something. I got up to assess the situation. That damn thing was standing in the middle of the field, fixated on my dog. He had a toothy grin on his face, and the little teeth in his mouth looked as if they were about to rot out. He was completely hairless and gray all over, with tiny, squinty eyes. I started screaming, making any kind of noise necessary to distract him from eating my dog, who during all of this was frozen in her tracks. His eyes darted up to me, and we had this staring contest for what seemed like hours, but I'm sure it was only a few minutes. He broke my gaze and, I shit you not, began peeing on my dog. It wasn't yellow or clear, but a disgusting pea green that coated my dog's fur. It was viscous, like snot. It had this horrible acrid smell, similar to sulfur, I guess. I have no clue what it was, but it was on my dog, and that couldn't have been a good thing. At this point, I grabbed a kitchen knife and started running towards the thing. He stopped peeing and wheezed away. I wouldn't pursue him, but I was just thankful he hadn't eaten my dog. Peeing on her wasn't the greatest alternative. I put on some rubber gloves and grabbed my lilac doggy shampoo to hose her down. Piggy normally doesn't like baths, but I'm sure she was happy to get that stuff off of her. I went to bed a few hours later, but not before locking all the doors again. I wasn't taking any more chances with this thing. I didn't know what to do about him that night, so I just decided to sleep on it. Now, normally my dog sleeps with me, but that night I never felt her climb up next to me. The one time I woke up, it seemed as if she was just staring off into the distance. My mom was crying, telling me there was something wrong with her. The dog was wheezing, and I instantly remembered that no-arm thing pissing on her the other day. But I shook it from my memories pretty quick to tend to my dog. I remembered she had this sad look in her eyes, and she wouldn't drink any water or even eat meat. It was scary, and I sped to the vet, who referred me to the hospital, who had her there overnight. Apparently, she had contracted doggy pneumonia in the middle of summer. About $1,100 in vet bills later, Piggy drove home with me the next day in a horrible thunderstorm. I pulled up in my driveway, and what do you know? That thing was standing right in the middle of it, just staring at me like a deer caught in headlights. I knew this was my chance. No more screwing around. I floored my car and drove right at him, saw his eyes widen to full circles. Next thing I knew, he jumped up on my car, then off again, then full-on sprinted off into the woods. I missed him. The one shot I had to kill him, and I missed him. The past couple of days, I haven't really slept. All I can think about is that creature. I've never heard of something like that before, and he doesn't seem as dumb as I thought he was. I know he's planning his next move, and I'm scared of what this thing might be planning for me or my family. I don't really know what to do. I've gotten about 10 hours of sleep the whole week, and I know I'm not going to be able to keep it up soon. I'm scared to close my eyes, scared that as soon as I do, he'll be back in my room, doing God knows what. Does anybody have any experience with a creature like this? I can't stay awake forever.